say a big welcome to you, Tyler. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. So I've been doing a lot of research on you, and I didn't realize how many TV shows you've been on. You know, you're on Gold Rush, Aussie Gold. Is it Aussie?
Yeah, Aussie Gold Hunters.
Yeah, Aussie Gold Hunters.
Yeah.
But obviously, you know, Gold Rush is a big international series, and that's the most recent series that you were on. But what people might not realize is that you're a fourth generation. Well, I was going to say gold digger, but you know, that joke it's probably run its course. But yeah, I mean, you're the fourth generation in your family to be continuing these traditions. And, you know, that in itself is amazing. So can you tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in this industry that, you know, for so long has just been like a mythical kind of profession that people didn't really get to know much about?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I am obviously fourth generation, which I find quite special. I'm very lucky that I have so much knowledge in my family. But growing up, it was, in reflection, very different to a lot of childhoods. I think at the moment when it was all happening, I just thought this is how everyone lived their life. But yeah, growing up, like in reflection now, I'm like, no, it was actually quite bizarre. Like I spent every school holidays out on stations in the middle of the outback, and my weekends were always like out bush prospecting or panning or crushing rocks. And at the time it was funny, like all my friends from school would be going to Bali or Esperance from their school holidays, and I'd be going to Barwidgee stations. I was like, what is going on? Why have I got the short end of the stick here? But honestly, I had the best childhood and I wouldn't change any of it. I had so much fun.
Wow. So what was that actually like? You know, you were out there amongst, you know, the dirt and getting your hands dirty. Were your parents sort of teaching you the tricks of the trade, like right from the beginning?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've absorbed a lot more than I thought I did at the time, because not only was my family all gold prospectors, the whole world I lived in were gold prospectors. So the people we associated with, the people my family dealt with and hung around with. So from such an early age, all my interactions, obviously outside of school, were with gold prospectors. So, and really all they talk about is gold, because that's all they do with their lives.
Yeah.
So like from such a young age, I'd be like in the loader or in the excavator, or like I used to follow behind mum or dad when they were out swinging the metal detector, and I would decide like which direction they'd go in. So I'd make little marks with my feet, and sometimes dad would be like, oh no, we wouldn't go that way because of this. And I'd be like, oh, okay, what about this way? And he'd be like, that's a better option. So yeah, from such a young age, I was just absorbing all this information. And yeah, it's not until later in life that I've realized how lucky I am that I did get that experience.
Yeah, amazing. And, you know, I think it's interesting that you have continued in their footsteps, because so often when you're raised with something, you know, you often see kids go the opposite way that their parents went, you know, out of rebellion, or, you know, they're just not interested in sort of following along and doing the same thing. But, you know, it's something that you're clearly passionate about. And, you know, why has that family link been so important to you?
Yeah, it's funny because for a little bit there, I did go stuff the goal game, stuff Kalgoorlie. I'm over the desert, and I packed up my life at 19 and moved to Melbourne. And I was doing events management and modelling and all this other stuff, the complete opposite. I was living in a different world. And then it wasn't until about 22 where I got pulled into Aussie Gold Hunters, and I got back into prospecting while filming the show, that I realised like how lucky I am. And I really don't want all that knowledge from the three generations above me to be lost. And I just realized as well that no one really, living in Melbourne, no one knows about prospecting really. So I kind of had this moment where I was like, oh, this is actually like a really cool job and I'm extremely lucky. So I want to be a prospector so I can pass it on to my next generation, because it's really becoming like a dying art.
Mm. And so, you know, you talk about your family going back 4 generations. Do you know what sort of year we're talking about that your great grandparents started in the game?
So yeah, my great grandfather, he was a prospector. God, he would have been in the 40s, 1940s, 50s, up into the 60s. But he his generation is really interesting because he was the generation from like old timing prospecting, so before technology, and then he moved into the first generation to be a part of the technology. So he was the first, like one of the first prospectors to use a metal detector. So that's really interesting because he got the knowledge from the old timers, which is definitely lost now because they're all dead. But he passed that to my grandmother, who then passed that to my father and now me. So yeah, he was really interesting. My first grandfather, he found my great grandfather, sorry, he found a massive patch out in a place called Sandstone, which is in Western Australia. And they found like 800 ounces there with some of the first metal detectors. And yeah, it's named after him. So yeah, his is like probably the most interesting, I think.
Amazing. And so what does 800 ounces look like?
Oh God, 800 ounces looks like a lot. It's funny. A lot of people find it hard to kind of like grasp what an ounce looks like, but gold comes in all shapes and forms. But like money wise, it's worth $2,500 an ounce. So that times 800 is like how much money. He wouldn't have got that much money, obviously, but these days that's what it would be worth.
Wow. So is he like the benchmark then? That's where you want to get to?
Oh my God, I would love to find an 800 ounce patch. We haven't quite got there yet, but it's going to happen.
Watch this space.
Exactly.
So is it likely that there is still, because, you know, we talk about the gold rush and the times that, you know, so many people across the world came to Australia to try and make it in the 1800s. And, you know, is it possible that there are still, you know, really well-resourced areas of the country that are just filled with gold and we just don't know about it?
Definitely, but they are becoming a lot harder to find. Like back in his time, my great-grandfather's time, obviously the gold wasn't worth as much, but there was a lot more of it around and it was a lot easier to find. These days, there's definitely those patches out there. You just have to think outside the box and go to a lot more remote areas. And now, like, especially because of the gold shows, there's obviously been an influx of people interested in prospecting. So there is a lot more people out there. So yeah, you just have to think outside the box and go a little bit more remote to find those bigger patches.
And so have you come across those people, you know, in your everyday life now, people that, you know, have been influenced by the shows and are out here trying to strike it rich?
Yeah, definitely. Well, especially being in Kalgoorlie, it is a gold prospecting town. So even when I'm down at the local pub, I get to meet people. And I think it's really cool that something that they've seen on TV has influenced them to like make a change in their life. And I was actually talking to a bloke the other day. He was around my age, which is quite bizarre. Normally they're a little bit older. And he loved the show, loved gold prospecting. And he'd never done it before, but his grandfather was a prospector. So he was like, can we go out bush? And he actually found like a 20-ounce nugget. So I thought that was really cool.
Wow.
It's worth quite a bit of money. And now he loves it. So now he's out there every weekend.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned, you know, that most of the people you come in contact with are probably quite a bit older. So I imagine that would have been one of the novelties of working on the show, working with young guys who were trying to kind of revive the industry a little bit. How did you actually get involved with that show?
Yeah, well, definitely. Parker, who I was on the show with, is one of the first gold prospectors, or he's a gold miner that I've met that like my age and that does it full time. So that was really special. We got to nerd out a bit. But I got into the show through Aussie Gold Hunters, and then I got into that through my parents. So they owned a gold shop in Kalgoorlie, so they were quite well known in the gold game. And like I said, moved back from Melbourne and yeah, fell back in love with it. So I was pretty lucky how it all panned out.
Amazing. And I've seen a few clips from Gold Rush, and, you know, it looks like you guys were together. You know, there was a whole group of you were together for a long time and, you know, getting really hot and really dirty and really probably tired of each other. So how did you actually manage being with these guys that you were sort of like newly acquainted with and being filmed intensely at the same time? What was that like?
God, it was intense. I just got really lucky that the three others I was with, Danny, Fred and Parker, were legends, and we got along so well because it really just was luck because I'd never met them before. They obviously knew each other, but I'd never met them before, and every single one of them has become like a part of my family now. But I can imagine if it went the other way and we didn't get along, it would have been a horrific 3 months. Like we lived on top of each other. We're in this tiny car and we were in the desert at the worst possible time of year. like summer. So it was like 40 plus degrees every day. There's flies in our face. And filming a TV show is not easy work. It is quite intense. And then because we're staying in the desert, so when you finish like filming, you have dinner with each other. You're just always together. So it was very intense, and we had our moments for sure. But yeah, there are a bunch of legends which helped so much. We actually just got along really well. So it was actually a really fun 3 months.
Amazing. And what was the best part of joining that show?
Oh, best part. Best part would be the relationships I formed with Parker, Fred, and Danny, and the rest of the film crew as well. Like, obviously, there's a big film crew with us, and they were all amazing, and they're all my friends now. We still keep in contact. So, that is a great part. But I also love the fact I got to visit parts of Australia that I hadn't seen before. So I've done a lot of prospecting in Western Australia, but I'd never been to Queensland prospecting. So I got to spend some time there, and I think it really helped me as a prospector because I learnt a lot from other prospectors, new techniques and new ways of doing things, which I've been able to bring back and apply to our prospecting over here.
Amazing. So it sounds like it's all been a win-win situation. And do you think there's going to be another season? I know it's difficult now, obviously, with COVID, but are there talks of, further adventures?
Yes, I would absolutely love to do another one. But it's all just up in the air. The hard thing as well is we're from all different parts of the world. It's not like we're all in Australia or all in the States. And so it is really hard, but COVID pending, hopefully there'll be another one.
Amazing. And, what did you do to look after your mental health when you were there? Because I know we'll come to that in a minute, but like, I know you talk quite openly about your mental health, but, that kind of a situation I can imagine, would have had its peaks and troughs. And how did you look after yourself when you were on the road?
Yeah, it was really hard. I was in a place with my mental health that I wasn't actually very stable either. So I would say ideally I'd be taking my medication properly and keeping up to date with my therapist and Zooming my psych and stuff, but I wasn't doing any of that. So I should have been doing that. So I'm actually probably a good example. But yeah, like I said, I wasn't actually in a really good place. So what I did was I was pretty open with the boys straight away, told them where I was at, and they were awesome. So if I needed something, I could just ask, and they helped a lot, which I think is important too, because people can't read minds. So I need to have open communication if I do want help, which I realized on the trip. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. And then just making sure that when I do have downtime, I'm like staying away from alcohol and getting rest. I was making sure I was exercising. It was pretty hard to like have a lot of self-care, but whenever I did get a spare moment, I was doing that. And yeah, just like talking and lots of communication and just letting everyone know where I was at and what was going on. Yeah, that helped a lot.
Amazing. And look, they're good strategies for life in general, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. So they're things I try to do in my everyday life. Like big ones for me, I know they sound so cliche, but eating healthy, exercising, communication, taking your meds, they're like some of the biggest ones for me. So I apply them to everyday life and work life.
Yeah. I watched one of your Instagram videos recently, and I learned something myself. You talk openly about your bipolar diagnosis, but then you were talking about not taking lithium regularly and taking it here and there and sporadically, and how that can exacerbate the symptoms of bipolar. And I, as a therapist, for the last 16 years or something, that's something that I didn't know about either. And, I found that fascinating because I know lots of people that have sort of been on and off medication, and I didn't realize what a huge impact that can actually have on the symptoms. So
yeah,
what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was such an eye-opener. And like, I probably should have done my research a little bit more before just taking this medication. And like psychs in the past, or even GPs, have like thrown medication at me, and I've just kind of like, I feel like sometimes they tend to do that and haven't taken it seriously. But with my lithium, obviously bipolar is quite a serious diagnosis, so I should have taken it more seriously, and I really wasn't. So yeah, I was taking it sporadically. And that led to me to having a manic episode. And like you just said, it increases the symptoms. So that could have been avoided. She even said, my psych was like, instead of taking it sporadically, it would have been better if you just weren't taking it all. So yeah, that led me to have a manic episode. And then going to see my psychiatrist later, she was like, yeah, Tyler, that is just the worst thing you could have done. I was like, oh my God, Tyler, get your shit together. But yeah, so I've learned like to take it more seriously. And now I take it every single day, and it has helped a lot. So yeah, you know what, it's probably happened for a good reason, because I am so like type A personality, and I always forget to do things, and I don't prioritize things. I'm all over the place. So like that's happened, and the manic episode has happened, and nothing really bad happened. So I kind of I've learnt my lesson, and I feel like going forward it won't happen again.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's really interesting that you've chosen to talk about this so publicly and share your journey with it, because, you know, it'd be very easy for you to just continue along your way and focus on the prospecting and a sort of media career and not really share that much about your personal life. So what was it for you that made the decision to sort of talk about it with everybody?
Yeah, there's probably two things. One of the first reasons was before I was diagnosed, this is like 4 years ago, my friend who I worked with, like my symptoms were just starting to happen. Like I was like, something's not right with me. I'm going like, something's not good right now. And I was speaking to one of my friends, and she was really open about it. She was like, oh yeah, I just saw my psych this morning. She's the best. We talked about this, and I'm on this medication now for anxiety, and I'm loving life. And I was like, oh my God, like maybe I should go see a psych. And she like changed some thought patterns in my mind about the way she spoke about it so openly really helped me. And then the second thing would be, I posted on my Instagram a while ago how I was seeing my psych and about my bipolar, and I got like an influx of messages from people like who are really thankful and super appreciative, and like they learned something. And heaps of people were even like, oh, I'm going to book into a see a psych, or I'm going to reach out to my family member who's struggling. And I was like, oh my God, like that, I feel like it's given me like a life purpose. And like anyone who is like struggling like on low, it's one thing for me is like motivation with like just doing day-to-day things. And so like this has given me like motivation to like help other people and keep on top of it and spread awareness, and not even for the people who are struggling as well, like the people who have family members who have people who are struggling. I really want to help them as well, because I know how hard it can be to love someone who's struggling. So yeah, talking about it more openly, I've noticed has helped people a lot, and yeah, that's why I keep doing it.
Amazing. I mean, that's just brilliant, because, you know, I guess that's kind of the premise of this whole show is sharing the things that we go through. You know, everybody has something, everybody goes through something, everyone gets diagnosed with something. There's always, like, that's just life. It's part of being a human, and it's how we come through these challenges that, you know, makes us who we are. So, you know, the more we can share our stories and our experiences and the knocks and how we got back up and how we work through things, I think the better off we all are. So, you know, I commend you for being vulnerable and putting yourself out there like that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I totally agree. Like the more people I speak to about it, I realize how common it is. Like everyone has something going on. And if we can kind of change the taboo around talking about it, I think that will help everyone a lot as well.
Totally. And, you know, I think, you know, sharing things like, you know, what you're learning from your therapist or from your doctor, I mean, that's just like, it's all just so important and also helpful. So I wonder, it's amazing. I wonder, sorry, my thing's just in the way there. I wonder what it was like for you. Like, would you mind sharing a little bit about sort of your road to diagnosis and how you knew that, you know, maybe you needed to talk to someone about things?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was like such a long road as well, which a lot of people can relate to. It's not something that can just happen overnight. So I was in a relationship for 7 years, and my partner, he had extremely bad mental health. So I kind of learnt like early on, I was 17 when that started, the importance of speaking about it and seeing a psych, because I saw him go down the wrong road. So when my symptoms started around like 19, which was like very, very depressive, I was having massive depressive episodes, which were like really hard, because I probably wasn't acknowledging that they were depressive episodes at the time, but like in the back of my mind knew something wasn't right. But yeah, all the typical things like sleeping pattern, like sleeping all the time, zero energy, losing motivation, like just overwhelmingly sad, not ever feeling happiness. And I actually went to my GP, and I was convinced I had an iron deficiency. I was like, I cannot get out of bed. I have an iron deficiency. And so she was like, okay, we'll do some tests. And she came back and she was like, your iron's perfect. I was like, no, it's not. I am iron deficient. I can't get out of bed in the mornings. She was like, Tyler, how's your mental health? And then like, it just was like such a confronting like question. I just broke down in tears, and she referred me to see a psych. So it kind of started there. But from that moment that I got referred to a psych, it took me six months to go see one, because you have all those thoughts like, oh, I'm fine. I've had a privileged life. I had an education. I have a good job. What do you have sad to be like? What do you have to be sad about? So all those thoughts. And then after 6 months, I went and saw a psych, and she was like, yeah, like there's probably a bit of depression and anxiety going on. Did not take that seriously. So ignored her for the next 6 months. And then I just was like, did not want to admit it to myself. It was like a combination of this, I don't want this to be real, and just like, yeah, all the taboos around mental health. Yeah, and then I ended up moving back home to Western Australia, and things got really bad in my relationship, where I was starting to have manic episodes. So I was taking them out my partner, and yeah, things became, like the people around me started to notice a lot more. So he was like, you need to go see a psych. If you don't go and see a psych, we're done. So I was like, Jesus Christ, I'll go see a psych. And then I saw a psych and got diagnosed with bipolar, and then refused to admit that was real. So I ignored him for a year. And then finally, like the symptoms got so intense that I kind of started to see like, maybe everyone's not lying to me. Maybe there's something wrong. And then, yeah, I went and saw a psych that I really liked. I didn't really like the first three. And then I found one that I loved. And she made everything make a lot more sense. So I started seeing her regularly. And yeah, that was probably 18 months ago. But like in that 18 months, I've had times where I ghost them, and times I come off my meds because I think they've made this all up. So it's definitely like not smooth sailing still, but yeah, it's definitely a journey.
Yeah. And I think, so many of the points that you made just then, like, I mean, everybody goes through that, even, no matter what it is, like if you're feeling anxious or if you're not sleeping well or whatever, you'll always try and find a million reasons not to go and see a professional about it. And, you might be having a few sleepless nights, and then the next night you sleep okay. So that's a reason that you don't need to have the appointment, because, you've had one good night's sleep out of 47. Yeah.
I'm cured.
That's it. Yeah. But I guess, it's all of that stuff, isn't it? That stigma, and like, I don't want anything to be wrong with me, and, I'll be all right. And all of those things that are just so common, and we all feel like that. So, well done for pushing through, and actually you might have been given an ultimatum, but you got there.
It's funny what you just said then. I actually went and saw one of the psychs in Kalgoorlie, a psychiatrist, and he was like, why are you not taking your meds? And I was like, I sat down, I was like, I just don't think I have bipolar. He was like, you've been diagnosed for like over like 18 months. I was like, yeah, I just don't think I have it. And he was like, Tyler, every person that sits down in my chair says, I don't have that. Like, I don't have bipolar. I don't have this. I don't have that. Everyone goes through that, but you've been diagnosed, you fit the things, you need to start like taking a little bit more responsibility and get on top of it. And I was like, that was such an eye opener. I was like, everyone else also has these thoughts. So I was like, okay, maybe there is something going on. Yeah. And I started taking a little bit more seriously from that point. So, but yeah, everyone has this exact same thoughts. Everyone I speak to has the exact same like thought patterns. And it's like really interesting that we're all kind of going through the same thing, just slightly different.
Yeah, 100%, and even me as a therapist, and I spend my whole professional life helping people come to terms with these things. And then if I'm feeling particularly anxious and not sleeping well and whatever, I might talk to my family or partner and say like, oh, I'm just like really just so anxious at the moment. I'm not sleeping well. Do you think I go to my doctor and deal with it? No.
You're all the exact same.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So I guess, one of the things that really struck a chord with me in I think it was that video that you posted about the medication, but you talked about being a high functioning person, that, having bipolar or whatever has never impacted you professionally. So that's been a really big reason not to address it. And I think a lot of people will relate to that, being really high functioning, being a successful person, being a career driven person, and it not getting in the way of that. So you just keep pushing yourself to the bottom of the priority list. So can you talk us through that a little bit?
That was like, yeah, so true. That was definitely a realization that I had, and it's helped me a bit now that I've kind of come to terms with it. But like, you even go online and you read symptoms for like bipolar or depression, and it's a lot of them are, it impacts your work life. And so I always like looked at that. I was like, oh, well, it's never impacted my work life. I'm fine. And it probably has, like, now in reflection a little bit, but because, yeah, still I'm doing all the things I want to do in my career and I'm having some successes, I was just like, well, I'm fine. So yeah, I've kind of come to terms that with, just because I'm successful in my business career, like business life, doesn't necessarily mean I don't have something going on. I find that I am quite high functional because I'm so career driven. And it's, just like probably made me realize as well that just because it's not impacting my business life, it's actually impacting my personal life, which is just as important. And I've always put business life so much on a pedestal. Like, that is what I am always thinking about. That's what I'm always like, all my goals are business driven. So just because it's like not in fact impacting that and it is impacting my personal life doesn't mean, it's not a negative thing. So I needed to start prioritizing my personal life and the impacts it was having on my relationships and relationships with friends and family and partners, and start prioritizing that a little bit more.
It's really interesting because that's such a big shift, isn't it? To put yourself as a priority and to be able to separate yourself from your work and realize that, okay, maybe I need to do some things, to balance everything out so that my focus isn't all going in one direction.
Like, I had a conversation with my friend, and this was before I was kind of coming to terms with it all. And she was like, but it is impacting your life. And I was like, no, I just got this contract. I just did this. I just launched this. This has just sold out overnight. And she's like, Tyler, you just had like fight with your best friend and now you haven't spoken in like 3 months. And then you've done this in your personal life and you and your mum are in a fight. And it's like, and it kind of was like this moment where I realized, I was like, oh, yeah, that is just as important as my business life. And just because I'm succeeding there doesn't mean that it's not an issue in other areas.
Yeah, 100%. So how have you made the shift? How do you stop putting work as the number one?
Yeah, well, I think as well, because like success and failure are so subjective. In the past, I put success as having X amount in my bank account, driving this car, selling this amount of books or this or that or whatever. And I never really saw, if it wasn't materialistic, I never really saw other things in my life as successes. So people would have like conversations with me and they'd be like, oh, that's like a really, like, that's awesome. That's like a really big success in your life. And I'd be like, no, it's not, because I don't have this much in my bank account. I'm not driving this car. So having a shift like from what I define success as has really helped. So now I define success as how many people have I like helped today, or have I taken my medication, or have I reached out to a friend that I haven't spoken to a while? And it's shifted from like success as a materialistic thing to more internal things and things I can actually control. So that has helped me, change my idea of success and what I'm prioritizing. And yeah, that's really helped a lot, just defining what I think success and failure is.
Yeah, so, wow, that's a massive shift. And I think that's something that we can all be doing, focusing on the things we can control, because for so many of us, the focus is where we want to get to, what we want to be doing, what we're lacking in our lives, instead of focusing on the things that are there and the people that are there and the things that are important on a personal level.
Exactly. Yeah, like even things like in the past, if I sat in bed at the end of the day and I hadn't sold this amount, done this, anything business-wise, I'd be like, well, today was a failure. But now I kind of lay there and be like, oh, I spoke to my cousin and I had a really nice dinner with my friend, and me and mum had a really good conversation, and I got to take the dog for a walk. So just changing my mindset of what I'm really concentrating and putting energy into has helped a lot. Like, obviously it's still super important for me to concentrate on my business and my career, but it doesn't engulf my mind as much anymore.
Yeah. And have you noticed any other things have changed for you in terms of, having the diagnosis? Is that helpful for you in recognizing patterns of behavior or, ways that you've been thinking perhaps in the past?
Definitely. When I did get diagnosed, even though I didn't fully accept it, it was like a huge weight off my shoulders, because instead of being a crazy, moody cow who can't control her emotions and can't make a decent decision ever, I had like a reason. I was like, okay, there's a reason you act like this, and there is something, something, I don't know if it's chemicals, but something's not right, and it's not all my fault. So for a long time, I just thought I was a bad person. So getting the diagnosis took so much weight off my shoulders, because I realized that not only is there a reason, but there's other people that go through this. So, and then also there was an action plan. And since then I've had so much education in how to realize when my symptoms are going off and how to react to that. And it also helps like my friends and family a lot, because in the past, before the diagnosis, I was moody and hard to be around, and I would make decisions that people would be like, what are you doing? And they were really hard to like, it was hard for them to understand how I could go from this Tyler to this Tyler and back. And so now having the diagnosis, they can understand my brain a lot more. And I'm surrounded by people who have helped me a lot. So they do their own education. They go and research symptoms and how to help. And now they can help see the symptoms starting to come up as well. So like my best friend would be like, Tyler, you're starting to talk really fast and you just drank 3 drinks in the space of 10 minutes. Like, are we okay, or are we like coming up on a high? And I'll then go, oh, like, thank you. I didn't even realize that was happening. So I can kind of step it back a bit. Or if I'm ignoring phone calls and sleeping all day, my mum will be like, Ty, I think maybe we're going through like a little bit of a low. Let's go up and go for a walk. So that has helped a lot as well.
That's amazing. Just getting your tribe around you to, you know, understand what it's like for you and to help you through it. Do you actually accept their input 100% of the time, or are there still moments where you're like, oh, what are you talking about now? I'm just fine. I'm fine. I'm just excited, or, you know.
It's been probably only the last 2 months that I'm starting to listen to the people around me more. When I went through my last manic episode, I was insane. And my best friend was like, Tyler, I don't know what's gotten into you. Like, you're doing this. Why have you made that decision? Like, you're acting like a crazy person. And I was just like, I'm fine. I'm just having fun. Let me live my life. And like, when I came out of it, in reflection, she was like, Tyler, like, I just couldn't get through to you. And so that was like a big eye opener. I was like, she was like kind of like not scared, but she was really, really worried about me. And I did not help the situation, not listening. So I've learned now to, if someone that I love is saying something to me, that I need to listen to it, because they're only doing it because they care about me. But yeah, definitely 100% of the time I am not listening. So it's something I'm working on.
I think we can all, you know, listen to the people around us a bit better, to be honest. Yeah.
No, I find as well, like, the people around you, well, I can say this because I'm in a privileged position, but they do want to help you, but they don't know how, especially if they haven't been through like mental health issues. So like, I lived with my partner for a long time where I was very mentally stable and he wasn't, and he refused to talk to me. I'd ask him what's wrong and he'd say I'm fine. And it's so difficult to help someone if they don't open up. So I make a really big effort to open up, and to the people around me, like, I'll send out a message in the morning about, girls, I'm on a high, I need to stay home. And they'll be like, okay, we're coming over. So it helps them as well if I'm open about it. That's another reason that I'm just like such an open book, because the more open I am, the more people can help me.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So then, you know, that's only part of your story. You know, that's something that has been, you know, a huge part of your recent, you know, the last 18 months in terms of understanding who you are and how people relate to you and how you relate to them and stuff. But again, you know, it doesn't define you. And I think that's one of the issues with coming to terms with these kinds of things, is being able to separate that from who you are and it not becoming like the only thing about you. And I think, as you say, by sharing it with people and normalizing this for, you know, the millions of other people just like you, you know, it sort of would help, I think helps to take away some of that stigma and some of that, you know, I guess that, what's the word? Not denial about it, but, you know, where we like it doesn't have to be the only thing that makes up who you are. It's just a part of your life and your being that comes and goes and, you know, is under control, and maybe it's not, and then maybe it is again. And
no, I totally agree. Like, even before I got diagnosed, I was very ignorant. And if someone had said to me they're bipolar, I'd be like, oh God, like, you know, you must just be so unstable, or, you know, you have no idea really. And now another reason I talk about it is because, yes, I have bipolar and it's there, but it's not like, it doesn't define me. It's not the only thing about me. So it's there and I deal with it, but there's also so many other things that I have going for me and I have going on in my life, that it's not the only thing that's there. It's there and I'm dealing with it, but there's lots else that I can talk about and look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those things you haven't you started, is it an online like, I don't want to get it wrong, but a prospecting course almost for people that are interested in getting into the field?
Yes. So that's called the Prospectors Club, which is my little baby.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had it for like 18 months now. And the reason I started that is because I had so many people messaging me after the show asking for tips and tricks and how to do this and how to get into prospecting. So it's basically an online membership, and they pay a monthly fee, and they get live webinars, lessons, tips and tricks, mentoring, which has been really good for me because I've met so many people now that are interested in the same things as I'm interested in. And yeah, it's just been a really good way to get the information out there without having to sit in my DMs all day as well. There was like an influx of people that wanted to learn about prospecting. Wow. I was like, I need to do this, but do it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what about like your day-to-day life? I mean, are you getting up and going prospecting every day, or is that just part of your week, or how does it look?
Yeah, so it is definitely a big part of my week, but because I'm a prospector, but I have the Prospectors Club and my podcast and other commitments, I'm every week's completely different. So I might be out bush prospecting 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. And then the days I'm not doing that, I'm in my office working. But mum and dad and Reese, who's my brother, are full-time prospectors. So they're out a little bit more than me, but I have to take a couple of days off a week just to do, admin, life, business stuff. But that's what I like about it. It's so different every single week, and the thought of like a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday gives me anxiety. So the fact that it is all over the place suits my chaotic brain, which I love.
Nice. Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about the podcast too, because I know that's right up my alley, what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've just started it. We're only 7 episodes deep, but again, I started that because I had an influx of messages from people about mental health and my bipolar journey. So I started it because I was having a manic episode, and at 4 a.m. I couldn't sleep and was like, I'm going to start a podcast. And I spent all this money on podcast equipment, and then I rocked up and I was out of my episode, and I was like, what have I done? So I was like, am I actually going to do this? And then I did the first episode, and it was about my bipolar journey, and I had so much positive feedback and this influx of messages from people. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do it because it's obviously helping people. And it kind of evolved from there. So I talk about mental health, and I talk about business and life stuff. And I'm really enjoying it. It's like a good outlet for me because I'm super creative, and prospecting and the Prospectors Club doesn't really give me that outlet. So this is kind of, satisfying that part of my brain. And I just really enjoy it because it's actually helping people. So that's probably the biggest thing that I like about it.
Amazing. And so how many episodes are you planning to do for this season?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I am doing an episode every fortnight at the moment. But yeah, I'm just seeing where it takes me as well. I'm not like super sure if we'll stick just to the mental health or if we'll broaden our episode like content. But at the moment, I'm just kind of seeing feedback and seeing where it goes.
Amazing. So the podcast is called Let's Unpack This, right?
Let's unpack that.
Unpack that. Let's unpack that. And I will put the links in the show notes as well so people can find that easily. And so what else is on the cards for you? It sounds like, you've got your fingers in a lot of things that are bubbling along nicely.
Yeah. So the Prospectors Club, in that department, we've just started doing merch and selling gold nuggets. So I'm doing a bit of e-commerce, which is exciting. I do enjoy doing that. And then, lots of exciting things with the podcast we've got planned. And one of the biggest bits of advice I ever got given was you have to walk through every door that's open for you. So I'm a big yes girl. So whatever gets thrown at me, I'm just saying yes at the moment, and I'm really excited about it. But I'm excited what happens this year.
Yeah, well, after last year when pretty much everything shut down, it does sort of feel like this is a big year. And I know we've still got a long way to go with the pandemic, but hopefully it means there are a lot more open doors than last year, that's for sure.
Oh God, yes. 2020. Let's put that behind us for sure.
Seriously. And what's the pandemic been like in Kalgoorlie? What have you guys have you been affected?
Yeah, we are super lucky. Like I can't even really complain compared to how the rest of Australia and the rest of the world have had how hard they've had to do it. Life is like pretty much normal here. Even just like in Western Australia as a whole, we haven't had a community transmitted case in like 9 or 10 months or something like that. So life's gone back to normal in regards to working, going out, restaurants, bars, pubs, everything's open. There's obviously some restrictions, but everything's pretty normal. I can't complain. Western Australia only had a tiny lockdown. I think we were in lockdown for 5 weeks,
Mm.
maybe less. And that's nothing compared to what you guys have gone through.
Well, I'm interested to hear, what the Indigenous perspective might be on the mining industry and, what you guys are doing as a family and how they might feel about that whole industry.
No, that is a great question. Yeah, obviously the mining industry in Australia, so big scale mining, has a lot to answer for, and the way they treat the Indigenous culture, and they don't have a lot of respect. There's so much more that needs to be done in that department. Like even what happened with Rio Tinto blowing up that sacred site was appalling. And it's funny because my morals, I'm a big environmentalist and I'm huge on respecting the Indigenous culture. So I do have a bit of a moral battle in my head because I am in the prospecting industry. But so what we do is a lot smaller scale compared to mining companies, and we're just little time prospectors, and we make sure that we follow all the rules. It is quite regulated in Australia. It's very regulated in Australia when it comes to small time prospecting. So we have to have native titles done, so that if there's a sacred site on our tenement, then it's not touched, the tenement's done. And it's like that throughout Australia. So not only do we follow the rules and make sure that we have everything ticked for legal reasons, but we do it like as a moral obligation, because obviously I don't want to just come in as white people and destroy the land and just take whatever we want and do whatever we want. So it's very important to me. But we also have a very good relationship with the elders and First Nations people in Kalgoorlie. So my dad has been in the game such a long time that he has a great relationship with a lot of them. And yeah, we're great friends and we talk openly, have open conversations about it. And I'm lucky that I've been raised by my father and my mother, who are extremely respectful, and they make sure they do the right things. And even little things, like if we do find an artifact, then it's reported and we make sure that we don't touch the area and everything's done correctly. But yeah, there is still a long way to go when it comes to the bigger mining companies, and they still have a lot to answer for. So hopefully in the future they can put their morals before money. But yeah, at this moment in time, they don't tend to do that quite often.
No. And I think our government's quite supportive of that mindset, unfortunately. So
God, yeah.
There's a long way to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I'd be interested to hear what the response was. It was Australia Day recently, and obviously the whole country is starting to be a lot more woke, for lack of a better word, and understanding the position of our First Nations people and how awful it is for them for this to be such a widely celebrated day. What's the response like where you are?
Yeah, so I am obviously completely against Australia Day. I do not celebrate. But where I live it's funny because it's a mixture. We do have quite a high Indigenous population who I'm friends with. So that's another reason I don't celebrate. I won't celebrate a day that not all my friends can celebrate. But then we're a small country town. We have a lot of people who I would say swing more right-winged on their political views. And for lack of a better word, there's a lot of bogans, and I'm allowed to say that because I'm a bogan and I am a lefty bogan. So there's a lot of bogans here that are, not exactly on the same page as I am with my views. And I'm quite on my platform, on my Instagram platform, I spoke a lot about Australia Day, and I was very open with my views, and I made sure that I shared a lot of Indigenous content, and I made purchases from Indigenous artists and businesses, and I signed petitions, and I did all those things. And I got a lot of responses from the people in my community who are right-winged. And it's funny, all their responses, they're just uneducated and ignorant. And for some reason, they feel like they are entitled to a day where they get to celebrate. I don't even know what they think they're celebrating, but it's very entitled, ignorant messages. And sometimes I bite and I respond. And probably 90% of the time it ends in them not changing their views. But there's 10% of people, then their views do get changed and they do open their mind. So that's why I do continue to respond to them, because I'm like, there's some hope in there. There's a trickle of hope. And it's funny, a lot of them that I got messages from are actually American. A lot of my followers are from the US. And they were just ignorant of the situation. It's obviously not something that is broadcast much in the States because they had no idea what was going on. And I just sent them links and educated them a bit, and they were really like they received it quite well, and which was good. But yes, it's hard living in a place like Kalgoorlie where there is some people that aren't on the same page. Yeah.
Oh, they're everywhere, Tyler.
They're everywhere. Yeah. Yes, I can imagine. Oh my God.
Yeah. But that's amazing. I'm so glad that, you know, you are using your platform like that and using your voice to, you know, talk about the issues, because at the very least we should be having these conversations. And, you know, if you can change one person's mind, then, you know, you're better off than you were before. So
that's my train of thought. Out of the 60,000 people that follow me, if I change one mind, that is a good day.
Yeah.
That is a success.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, I just, you know, I could actually keep talking to you all afternoon, but I am aware, you know, you probably have other things to do. But thank you so much for being so honest and sharing so much of your story and your thoughts with us today. It's just, you know, an absolute pleasure to talk with someone who is so open about their story and their experiences. So thank you.
Oh, no, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I feel like we could keep chatting all day.
I know, same.
Like it's nearly been an hour. That went so quickly.
I know. But yeah, what I'll do as well is I'll put the links to your Instagram up in the show notes and to your podcast. Is there anything else for the Prospectors Club? Is there a website?
There's an Instagram for the Prospectors Club as well. But yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Beautiful. I'll do that. No problem at all. And yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.